Now I would like to invite and introduce our first guest speaker, Syerah Virani. Syerah is not new to the Institute. She's been a guest faculty on a couple of our sessions earlier, and she's brought on tremendous amount of energy to the sessions. She is a fearless entrepreneur. She walked away from a busy Bay Street law practice and took over as editor-in-chief of and CEO of mybindi.com. In addition to her role at MyBindi, Syerah is also founder of Toronto chapter of Network of Indian Professionals. As I said, she has an engaging style and brings great passion to her experience. Through her company, Entrepreneur Incorporated, Syerah assists enterprises with their business plans, marketing, action plans, social media presence, etc. She continues to practice law though as a sole practitioner and specializes in advising small businesses and startups. I should not stand between you and Syerah anymore. Please allow me to welcome Syerah.
Good evening, everybody. I actually see some familiar faces, so we've got some Thai Institute alumni here as well. My name is pronounced Syerah, so if you ever do call me or email me or have to talk about me, just get that out. It's a pleasure to be back at Thai Institute. I have a very fond association with Thai. One of the reasons I am very committed to the work that Thai does and extremely in awe and admiration of the work that Lalit is doing especially is because my leap of faith from a Bay Street lawyer to a full-time entrepreneur essentially was catalyzed by Thai. And this was 5 or 6 years ago. It was the second year of Thai Quest. And somebody asked me to compete and participate in that competition. I was so green and did not have a clue about what it meant to be an entrepreneur. But, I said, sure, I'll do it because I will learn, and even if I fail, I will take away some lessons. And am I ever glad that I did that, because Thai Quest is what gave me questions which I had to learn on a very short time frame, because Thai Quest is very compressed, very fast. You have to do your business plan in a week, and then you have to present it a week later, and then you do your summary, your elevator pitch. All of this was very fancy terminology for me at the time. And even with the mentors, I actually made it to the second last round of the competition, which was great, and I knew exactly why I did not move on, but that's a different lecture for a different day. What I'm trying to say is that this particular institute is offering you resources, information, experiences, which if I had the benefit of 6 years ago, I would probably be on the TSX today, but I will be. It'll just take some more time, but I'm saying it's possible because there is a wealth of information, experience, and all of the speakers. I mean, I'm extremely humbled to be in the company that we have on this panel and on panels that I've served on before. These are people that are very difficult to get, often 5, 10, 15 minutes of their time. And for them to come out here and give you and share with you the resources that they will, I'm hoping that all of these empty chairs will be filled up in forthcoming sessions, because you will get on the phone and tell all your other friends about this program. You will bring in people, because that is really the value of what Thai Institute offers. And so, Lalit, thank you. And please don't cut this from my time. I'm plugging you here. Anyway, I was just kidding. My sessions, when Lalit say I bring a lot of energy to it, it's his very polite way of saying I rarely follow my script. Sometimes I don't follow my slides. And I'm often prancing about because I get very excited very easily. And before you know it, I'll be here or there, and like you'll see, I'll still be on the first slide and probably talking about my 10th slide. So I'm getting better. The reason I've been asked to present this particular session, and really that makes me the inaugural speaker of this series, right? Right. Okay. So the reason I was asked, and the sort of the brief that was given to me is, Syerah, you have navigated these waters. You have escaped from Cubicle Nation, right? So maybe what you can do is come and share some of your insights, some of your lessons. And I'm constantly exploring this world of entrepreneurship, and I'm always learning. It's not an exhaustive course that you can just say, okay, that's the book, I've done it, and now I know everything there is to know. Because the playing field is constantly changing, the rules are changing. So you have to evolve. So that's what I'm going to try and talk to you about. It's not, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is actually borrowed from many books. I read a lot. People who have been here before, faces I recognize, will know that I have never actually given a session or talked at a seminar without leaving behind a list of books that you should read, because I believe that when you read books, you are leveraging the experience and the mistakes of other business owners, and you learn so much. So I will constantly name books, and sometimes I'll know the title and the author, sometimes I'll know one or the other, but you can Google them all, and if not, feel free to send me an email, as a lot of you have done in the past, and I will share the details with you once I'm at my computer. So what makes an entrepreneur? How do you define an entrepreneur? Now, I'm 40-something, so I should come out there and say that. And the reason I say that is because I grew up in an age when I still went home and looked at the dictionary, right? I did not know Wikipedia. The encyclopedia was 25 bound books, which is where I sat and did a lot of my research. So when somebody asked me a question, how do you define something? Where's the first place you turn to? You turn to a dictionary. So let's see what this dictionary has to say. Now, the dictionaries, I know that they're constantly being upgraded and updated because they say, well, this is the new slang and new words, and you know, I find it hard to keep up with words. I have a teenage daughter that often says YOLO every time I say something to her, and I don't know what that means, but apparently it means, Mom, you only live once, so do it. It's YOLO, right? So, okay, Merriam-Webster probably hasn't caught on to that, but this is how they define an entrepreneur. They say an entrepreneur is someone who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise. It sounds very academic, it sounds very distilled, and it's probably right. But this is my session, right? This is not Merriam-Webster's session. So does Syerah define this to be an entrepreneur? Perhaps there are shades of all of this in an entrepreneur, but it's so easy today to get confused and misunderstood when you use that word, that term entrepreneurship. Who is an entrepreneur? I coach entrepreneurs. Like Lalit said, I have a business, a company called Entrepreneur Inc., through which I actually work with a lot of small business owners. So my client could be a realtor who is, you know, selling homes and doing what realtors do. My client could be another lawyer or an accountant who is trying to get all his social media. Are these people entrepreneurs? My client could be somebody who has money, and so he's invested it in a Subway or a Tim Hortons franchise, right? And he is working really hard to make that franchise grow, but at the end of the day, he has bought into a franchise. So all of these people, if you ask them what you do, they will all say, well, I'm an entrepreneur, right? But there are different shades of entrepreneurs, and I think it's important for you to realize, or for you to at least recognize, that there are different shades of entrepreneurship and where do you fit in. So without going into too much detail, this, I think, is my definition of entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur is somebody that builds systems, builds a systems that can generate a revenue without them. Now, this is not necessarily something you can quote and get away with, but this is what I believe entrepreneurship to be. If you are an accountant, and if you put up the shingles and say, I'm an accountant, I can do tax returns, I don't need to be working at Deloitte, I can do this on my own, yes, you will see the risk and the reward of owning a business. You will see many of the same challenges of hiring and firing. But at the end of the day, your income is closely linked to your hours. You stop working, your income stops, right? And that to me is not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is when you can generate a system which you put in place, you get into motion, and then you can say, now let the checks come in, let the money come in, because it can grow. And that is what I want you to visualize as entrepreneurship. But like I said, that's not necessarily the complete explanation of entrepreneurship. Even within that definition, there are many different types of entrepreneurs. Steve Blank from Stanford University actually wrote a paper about this, and he has these 4 categories, and I'll use them because they work for, I want to spend no more than maybe 30 seconds on this slide. Small business entrepreneur is probably what 95% of new businesses end up being, right? And this is the person that says, I'm going to, I don't know, sell cakes, or I'm going to write software which is going to generate patterns, and then I'm going to license it, and then, you know, the guy who actually created Salesforce.com, a billionaire, started that way, but he would probably fit in the scalable startup. So a small business entrepreneur is someone that usually invests personal funds, personal savings, gets money from friends and family, and has a very smaller view of how the business gets off the ground. Okay, the scalable startup guy is likely what you will see a lot of the contestants at Type Quest will be. These are the kind of entrepreneurs who are onto something, but the scale of that project needs funding, so they have venture capital and investors and private funders that loan money into them for equity or debt or however that might work, and then they go on to grow their enterprises. Then you've got the large company entrepreneurs. So scalable startups are usually 5% or so of the market. Large company entrepreneur is actually when a very, very successful company decides to branch off into a separate product line. And so what they do is, because there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tapeism and hierarchy already created with this parent company, and they want to go and innovate, they might just create a subsection and say, you deal with the risks, rewards, and launch something. So it's entrepreneurship, but it's still under the eye of the big brother. Social entrepreneur is somebody or an organization or a company that possibly is not for profit, but runs itself like a business, and the objective is to create some kind of social change or activism or awareness. And the Canadian Breast Cancer Society, the pink ribbon, it's probably one of the most fascinating non-corporate approach to a business, because, for all intents and purposes, they're a charity, and anyway, I won't get into that, but there's a documentary called The Pink Ribbon something. But that's social entrepreneurship, where the ultimate goal is not money, it's some kind of change, and so they manage themselves like a business, but the goal is actually to facilitate change. So I'm going to talk about possibly the first category, because that's my category. So I can maybe speak most earnestly and with most experience on that small business entrepreneurship model. So what makes an entrepreneur? All of us, we think Steve Jobs when we think entrepreneurs. We think Richard Branson when we think entrepreneurs. We think of these iconic figures. What is it that it takes to be an entrepreneur, whether you're a small business owner or someone just starting out with an idea? So the rest of my session, which is now we're getting into the meat of it, I'm going to try and talk about what I feel I learned over the last 7 or 8 years, and some points that I've put down and some slides that say this is what entrepreneurship entails, and then you can ask yourself that question: have I got what it takes to do this, right? Tenacity. What is tenacity? Now, if you've seen, no, I won't go there. I was going to say a Celebrity Apprentice, and there was a team called Tenacity, but anyway, we'll go there. Tenacity is basically your first resource that you will need when you jump into these entrepreneurial waters. Because the first time you come up with that idea or that thought, and you say it out loud and say, you know what, I think I'm going to go start a business. Maybe you've just graduated from business school and you're thinking, I don't want to take on an employment position. I want to start my own business. What's the first thing that's going to happen when you say, I want to start my own business? Is there'll be 10 people. For every one that says, go for it, there'll be 10 that says, are you crazy? Right? And these are the naysayers. There will always be somebody either discouraging your idea, your morale, your aspirations, and tenacity is that ability to keep saying no to them, right? Because it will happen. And if you are going to fold, the minute someone sits you down and say, you know what, you've put so much money in, why don't you do this first, get yourself whatever, and then before you know it, you have a house, you have a mortgage, you have a car, you have whatever, and that dream that you have, or that hope, or that idea, or that ambition is crushed because there was no tenacity. There was no will to say, no, I believe in this, I deserve this opportunity, and it doesn't matter. If you don't think my idea is worthwhile, I'll find somebody else who does. If you turn me down, somebody else will. If I don't get this space, I'll get another one. Tenacity is that ability to just keep getting up and saying, I'm going to keep going for it. You say no. Street smarts. A lot of us seem to think that we all need to have an MBA to have an entrepreneurship approach. Or we need, and they help, absolutely. But you can get yourself, well, I did. I don't have an MBA, but I've read. I am always reading the books on INSEAD's reading list, or I'm finding out from friends what's on the Harvard Book Review list for their business school. Read and engage, so you don't have to have that $80,000 a year education. If you can't afford it, there are ways to get those lessons. But street smarts is something you can't go to a university and learn. That is something that is, what is street smarts, first of all? It's not conning people. Somehow street smart seems to be equated with your ability to be glib and like a confidence trickster. No, that's not what street smarts is. Street smarts is your ability to quickly appraise a situation, size it up, figure out your options, and then be able to say, this is the one that works for me. There's just something to that which is not got from a textbook. So I said I would bring in personal experiences. So we talked about tenacity. When I decided to take over mybindi.com, it was actually already in existence, but not nearly where I thought it could be. So I decided to buy it off its founders. And I made them an offer like the Godfather would say that they couldn't refuse, right? I thought, I don't want to deal with this. I'm an M&A lawyer. I can draft the agreement. Here's the money. Let's do the deal, and let's make it quick, right? I had the naysayers. I had the people that say, are you crazy? You're a single mom. I was a single mom at the time. The only bread earner, and I had just sponsored my parents from India. So now I have my parents living with me in my house, I have a young child living with me, and I am totally accustomed to the Bay Street salary. So my lifestyle is very much a victim of my paycheck. And I knew that giving up that paycheck was going to be very scary. And there were a lot of naysayers, but I had to believe in what I thought I was trying to achieve and say, no, I'm going to do it. Street smarts. Street smarts, like I said, often, I believe, come from your upbringing, come from maybe where you've grown up. And I find people that have not been raised with a silver spoon in their mouth, as they say, are more likely to have this hunger, this ability to quickly appraise situations. So I was actually born, like I said, I'm from India. I was born in a very modest family, and for anyone who's familiar with the social landscape of India, we were, like, India has the very poor. Everybody's seen Slumdog Millionaire, right? I wasn't that. But I wasn't very rich either, which is, having my driver and a maid and all that stuff, which everybody seems to have. So I was in the middle class, but India is probably one of those countries where the middle class is like 3 or 4 classes again. There's like the lower middle class, the middle class, the upper middle class, and then the top middle class. So I was probably on the lower middle class. We lived in a chawl. It's a small room, shared the room with my parents. The washroom is like, 150 yards away. That's the environment I grew up in. But that's okay, because the washroom was there. I had to constantly strategize. I don't want to go there and wait for it. So how am I going to make, and you just grow up looking at situations, and then you don't realize that when I came into Canada, and obviously now I'm this Bay Street lawyer, but my street smarts are still with me. No matter where I am, I'm sizing up the situation, whether it's finding a parking spot in a parking lot, or being invited to an event which I know I want to be at. All of that requires some level of street smarts. So I definitely think that street smarts is a very important part of that mix of what makes an entrepreneur. I lived in England for a few years before I came to Canada, and actually that's where I went to law school. And while in England, anyone who's traveled there, this sign should be familiar to all of you, right? Even if you've never taken the tube. There's this big sign that constantly tells you, mind the gap, please, mind the gap, please. And what does that mean? Is that there's a train, there's a platform, there's this big gap. If you don't look at the gap, you're going to fall in it. So please mind the gap. How does this relate to entrepreneurs? Now, as entrepreneurs, you are looking for these gaps, because where everybody else will see a gap, what will the entrepreneur see? Opportunity. The entrepreneur is going to say, there's a gap. How am I going to fill this gap? And the minute you find that gap, and you find a way to fill that gap, and then you find a way to monetize it, market it, before you know it, you're on to a business idea, it's a model, and it's something you can test. So if you are an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, look around you. Every time something frustrates you, play this game with yourself. I do it all the time. And I'll tell you about this. Actually, right now is a good time. So I recently moved from Burlington to Etobicoke. My office, I moved it from Oakville to Etobicoke, but my new space is not going to be ready for a while, and it's a beautiful space. It's about, only a tiny little portion of this room, but it's enough for my team. And until that space gets ready, I have to put my staff somewhere. So where do I put them? On my dining table. Come home, we'll work from home, I'll make you chai, and we'll make it, we'll be a big happy family. They weren't too happy, but hey, that's what the boss says, that's what happens. So for the last 3 months, my team is working from home. And guess what? When I have to meet a client, I'm going to Starbucks, I'm going to Artisano, I'm going to Panera Bread. Sounds familiar? Right? Those are the places you go to because they have coffee, they have enough tables, and they have free Wi-Fi. Great, I can sit there, I can meet my client, I can conduct my meeting, I can go back to my home office, and I'm done. But what happened in those 3 months? There was a gap. What was the gap? I was meeting a legal client, a client from a law practice, and I'm there, we have to sign some documents, I have a closing, we meet there, we have to find a nice secluded table, go through everything, and there's a change. Oh, there's a typo. There's a typo in one of the documents that I've drafted, and I'm anal about crossing things out. I like them to be perfect. If I was in my office, I would have just quickly made the change on my computer and printed something out and got the client to sign it, right? But Starbucks, Artisano, Panera Bread, they don't have printers and USB sticks or a scanner or a business station, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a coffee shop. So I was like, oh, this is so frustrating. And then I'm thinking, if this is frustrating for me, this must be frustrating for other people. And so I'm thinking, let me now see if I can do something that's not a Starbucks scenario. So where am I going to go? I looked into those Regis office virtual solutions, and I can basically rent an office space for $300 a month or $500 a month. And every time I want to meet a client, I can go there, and then I have these, all these gadgets at my disposal. I have a computer and a laptop, a printer and a scanner and a photocopier. So I'm using that facility at Regis in one of their Mississauga locations. And guess what? It's lonely. Because at the end of the day, there's no personality. It's an empty office with a boring looking desk, and I'm there with a client, and there's no soul to it. And I go there, I use my 10 hours or 20 hours a month, and I walk away, but there's no value to that entire space because there's no ability to network with all the other professionals that are using it for the other 100 hours, right? Frustrating. So when I got my office space, finally, and I went through the plans, and my designer and architect is like, so how do you want it? So my old office, what did I have? I had a fancy office for myself, I had a cubicle for one of my staff, my designer had one, there was a client room, and the whole thing was an office. But at the end of the day, when everybody went home, we locked up the office, and it's a dead space, right? But because I had seen all these gaps, I said to my architect, hey, wait a second. Instead of designing an office and then just using it for my bindi, for my staff to come in, let's turn this around. Let's make this a collaborative workspace instead. Let's create a space where entrepreneurs can come in and work all day if they wanted to. Let's create a model where we charge them a pay-as-you-go fee so they can come in and pay $10 and have the space for 4 hours. $2.50 an hour, no problem, right? Any entrepreneur would pay that to use that collaborative workspace. We'll have a little kitchenette, bring your lunches, no problem. We have meeting rooms which have these collapsible nano walls, which are so great because you can fold them back and these private rooms become an open space. So now I can rent it out. I can do seminars, I can do birthday parties, I can do bar mitzvahs, I can do whatever I want. It's my space. At 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock when my staff goes away, my revenue stream keeps going, right? Now, this is a business, it's still in plans, I'm sharing it with you. It's going to be called the Zen Campus. I love that name because you know what? Google has Google Campus, the entrepreneur has Zen Campus. I'm getting there, but this whole business model came from a gap. If I am facing this limitation, if I am so frustrated, there must be others like me, and if I can come up with a solution that works, and this is a work in progress, so there's lots of great things coming there, and my bio will get a little bit longer the next time you introduce me. Survival instinct. This is what is often confused with tenacity, right? People are like, but you already said I have to be tenacious and say no to everybody that tries to, dampen my, oh my God, I have 5 minutes, there you go, I screwed up again. Okay, so survival instinct is about, if tenacity is about constantly leaning forward, tenacity is about staying still or taking those punches and getting back up again. Has anybody here seen Rocky with Sylvester Stallone? That is survival instinct. That is, or even this film, Castaway. It's like I am going to make it in the odds. So that is survival instinct. Passion. I'm not even going to spend time on this because passion is almost abused now when people talk about entrepreneurship because it's used so often. But it's important. It really is important. And what that means is when you talk about your business, when you talk about your idea, it has to jump out from that screen, from your face, into that room as an organic being and has to be contagious because that's how you're going to inspire people to work for you. That's how you're going to inspire investors to give you money and your customers to buy from you. You need to believe in your work, and that's what passion is. This is a bit of what they call the reality pill. Entrepreneurs work hard. We do, and not because we often have to, but because we want to. 3 years ago, I got remarried. It's my second marriage, and I went on my honeymoon. It was a Caribbean cruise. My husband had taken so much trouble to plan this cruise, and we left. And you know what I had with me in my carry-on? I had my laptop, I had my iPad, I had my iPhone. And he's like, "It's our honeymoon." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I can't take this? Forget it." No. I love my work, and you will love your work. If you want to switch off, if you want that stability and that comfort of saying, 4 weeks, I'm going to go away. No, you want to have that pulse on your business, and that requires hard work. Lalit often gets emails from me at, 3 or 4 in the morning. That's not because I like to be sleep deprived, but at 2 in the morning, if I'm on to something, like this PowerPoint actually, I was finding images for it, you want to just keep going. You know, it just seems like I can catch up with my sleep. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, because you can catch up. It gives you that opportunity to change convention. You have these rules. Appetite for risk. This is important because remember I told you when that Bay Street lawyer said, "I want to buy my bindi and I'm going to give them all this money just so they sell it to me." How am I going to come up with the money? Well, I refinanced my house. And everybody was like, "Are you mad?" The office that I bought, Zen Campus, as it's called, all it was supposed to do was be a nice little office with 4 desks and a laptop and a filing cabinet. The whole thing would have been done under $20,000. But no, I'm thinking, I have this great idea, Zen Campus, my collaborative workspace. It's going to be like the ING Direct Center, except it's going to be a money-making model. Because people will actually be able to print stuff and do stuff and engage stuff, and it's going to give me money. Well, guess what? That project is not going to cost me over $200,000 just because of what I want to put in it. I have to come up with that money from somewhere, but that's what entrepreneurship's about. Attention to detail. There is nothing, and Steve Jobs is the best example of this. If you haven't read his book, or actually the book written about him, you should read it. Because it's this unique insight into this individual that most of us only know from his speeches. You know, only the crazy ones, and we read like 5 quotes and we're like, we know Steve Jobs. You will still admire the guy, but you need to know his obsession to detail, right? So that's important. Getting things done. I have coached so many candidates and clients that have come to me and said, "You know, I have this idea." That's how it starts. And then I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about it." And they say, "Okay, I'll get back to you." They come back 3 months later. So you know that I know if you are not going to commit to your idea, if you can't take that decision, what makes you think an investor will? That's how the VCs know you're not the real stuff. Because you are not decisive about when to hire staff, what software to use. I design websites for a living through Entrepreneur now. Mock-ups. I see clients like, "I don't know if I want ASP or if I want WordPress or if I want," you know, you show them the options. At some point, you need to be able to make a decision and move on. This is important. No, Mr. Nice Guy, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to be ruthless. And being ruthless does not mean being mean. And that is so important. This is actually a great little book. I read it on a picnic. You know, everybody was on a picnic. It was a summer day. Everybody's playing with their frisbee. And I'm like, I'm going to catch up with some reading. And this book, actually finished it in 2.5, 3 hours. It's a fast, fun read. It's a great book for anybody who's seen Dragon's Den. One of the things that I really liked in this book is because everybody who's watched the show knows this guy, thinks of him as this mean-spirited guy who's just out to dampen and crush every entrepreneur's dream. But if you read the book, he actually tells you some very valid things. And the one that I took away, aside from the fact that your time is really important, and I know yours is too, is you have to be ruthless. But you can be nice. Right? Actually, he says you can be kind. You don't have to be nice about it. So when you're an entrepreneur, you will fire people. You will turn away customers. You're going to do a lot of things that are going to shift your comfort zone. And speaking of comfort zone, I'm going to give you this quote because I love it. It's called, "There is no growth in comfort, and there is no comfort in growth." Think about it. It's very true. If you want to grow, get out of that comfort zone. And if you stay in that comfort zone, you're not going to see growth. Okay, last point that I think is very important in addition to everything I've said, at the end of the day, you got to be able to live with everything you do, every decision you make. You've got to be genuine, you've got to be authentic, honesty, integrity, and generosity. You will find other entrepreneurs along the way. You will help them. Not because you're trying to keep score, because that really is what networking is about. How generous are you with your time, with your contacts, with your relationships, with your lessons? And the more generous you are, the more you will find that it comes back multifold. Just trust me on that one. So why do we do all this? So that we can do what we love and love what we do. What are the rewards of entrepreneurship? Well, if you get that far, you become a legend. If you're still where she is, where I am, you do have the ability to manage your work schedule in a way that suits you. So yes, I took my laptop with me on my honeymoon. I did that, but you know what? I've had 6 vacations. And I'm going to Spain in 2 weeks. And that's okay, because I know there's Wi-Fi in every hotel that I'm staying at. So I'm going to be in touch with my work, but it allows me to travel. And that I see as a reward of entrepreneurship. And at the end of the day, you don't want, and this is why I don't like franchises. Everything is packaged, everything's instructed. You want that challenge. You want to be able to say, I'm going to try this, I'm going to tweak that. And that comes with your own enterprise. And entrepreneurs thrive on challenge. Money, yes, you'll get that. I'm done. What do you need? Actually, other people are going to cover this, so I'll leave that. This slide is how I always end, because every seminar I give, people nod, people are very excited, but then they have the pizza, and then they go home, and then it all fizzles out. So yes, it's easy to get inspired, it's easy to say, I'm going to go and do something, but really, execution is key. It's only when you do that, what you're supposed to do, that your ideas can take flight and get implemented. You can be connected to me. I'm at entrepreneur.ca. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and that's my presentation. Thank you.